19th Eclipse OpenJ9 community call. As always, please add your name and affiliation to the list of attendees. It just gives us some idea of who's regularly been attending. So we've got our agenda before us, but I'll pause here and see, is there anything people want to add to the agenda, any items that are critical that we need to take off the top? If there is, please speak up now, or for new agenda items, feel free to also add them into the any other business section. We don't have a lightning talk scheduled this week, but Marius, I see you're on the call, so I'm just wondering if you are ready to do the JIT AOT service.
Yeah, I know I've been promising this. Very basic steps. Non-JIT server.
Is it something you think that you'd be able to get to in the near future?
Yeah, so second week.
Sorry, I don't know if it's on my end or your end, but I'm getting some skipping in your audio.
Second week of May.
Sorry,
10th,
Marius,
May 10th.
May 10th. Perfect. Let's schedule that in then. Thanks, Marius. Do I see Lan? Because I know she had wanted to. Don't see her on the call, so I'll follow up with her elsewhere about the feature testing. If others have lightning talks they'd like to give, feel free to reach out to me either during the call now or at another time, and we can get those scheduled in as well. Take a quick look at the recent user-raised issues for anything that's come in over the last couple of days. Nobody's raised a concern about not seeing the memory savings when they're using OpenJ9 with a Spring Boot app, but it looks like there's been some discussion happening there. So continue to follow up with that if needed. Issue with the blanking on what the term for this is right now. DTFJ, thank you. So it looks like there is some discussion around this, and it's been moved to the backlog. Keith, is this something that's on your list or that you're aware of at least?
Sorry, Dan, distracted by other hot issues. Which one are we talking about?
The loop in DSA stack frame bind SFXM.
Oh, yeah, the originator of that contacted me in advance. I suggested they open the issue. I think the code has a couple of loops. I guess one for each direction the stack might go, and it watches for kind of a null pointer. But it can be more demanding of the stack pointer. They should be strictly increasing or strictly decreasing, so that we catch more problem situations. That was my proposal there. So yeah, I expect to get to that one before too long, but it shouldn't be that much more than what I just described.
It sounds like you're well aware of it, so that's.
We just make sure it's assigned to Keith, and then it can stay in the backlog, and we'll move it out once it gets some action.
Is there anything else in this list that needs some discussion today? Right, then we'll jump back to the agenda. And looking at the release roadmaps, the 031 release I missed the meeting last week, but I understand that we had agreed to cancel that release. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't remember the exact timing, but maybe we could have done a release last Thursday or so. But didn't make much sense considering 032 release activities start today.
I guess that brings us to the 032 release. What's the state of that today?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much ready to go. There is the OpenSSL 3 support. It just needs some reformatting and some comments, and then we can get that in. Meanwhile, we're waiting for the OpenJDK updates that normally don't happen until this afternoon.
There had been 3 or 4 issues in the milestone plan last week. Were we able to get those resolved, or did we move them out? What was the outcome of those?
Don't know if I can remember them all off the top of my head. One of them has a workaround in 032 and continues to be worked in the head stream. I think another one, we had a PR that was merged that fixed it, and one was moved out to 033 because we're waiting for input.
Okay. Sounds like we got to a reasonable place with them then. That's good to hear. All right. Is there anything blocking this release or any other discussion that we need to have around this?
I think we're good.
It's great to hear. It's great to be in this position where we're ready to get them out as soon as we get the updated pieces, so that's good. And that gives us a little bit of time before we have the next quarterly release then.
Yeah, although we should start looking at the 033 milestone plan. I don't necessarily have to do it today because we probably have other things we want to cover, but want to make sure we're on top of the 033 and have the right things in the milestone plan and move things in that need to be in and move things out that don't need to be in there.
Agreed. I will point out here that 32 is the first time we have this, but 33 will be similar in that we will be shipping 4 releases instead of 3. We now have 3 LTS streams on the go and 1 feature release at all times. So that's an increase in the amount of testing, validation, and work that needs to go into getting the release out the door. Skip ahead to the adopt update. Don't see Shelley on the call. Is there somebody else who can give an update on how things have been going at adopt? We'll skip forward for this. Adam, do you have an update for the infrastructure?
Yeah. So excuse me. Our Artifactory disk was creeping up again, so we hammered it from 30 to 25 late last week just to get us through the weekend. So it's starting to creep back up again, obviously, over the weekend. So we're going to probably have to follow up with that because we had gotten up to, I believe, 96%.
I'm hoping we're going to be okay because we'll be doing some final builds for the release and then we won't be doing those builds anymore. So we'll just keep an eye on it and keep our fingers crossed.
Okay, fair enough. The OSU is now offering AR64, which I believe I mentioned before. So I've requested machines. They've given us 1 so far. So I'll follow up with them to get more online, and then we'll have to set them up. The Windows machines, there's about 8 issues that we need to address with them. So we're going to cover them all at once and rebuild the machines from scratch. So hopefully that work will commence in the coming week or 2. We're going to keep the old ones around until the new ones are vetted, so shouldn't have any concerns there. About it for me.
Anyone have any questions for Adam? Brings us to the any other business section. Don't see Devin on the call, so I skip over the Cmake migration.
He did open an issue last week. Thought we were ready to move, turn on cross-compile support, but that affects basically only RISC-V. But the person we have, Jan, I think his name is, who's working on RISC-V, said it didn't work for him, so that's still under investigation.
Pete. Marius, is there an update on JIT server?
So we are going to declare GA on 30.
Is that on all platforms or x86 only?
No, all platforms. And not just Prometheus, any monitoring solution.
Maybe we should get clarification in the chat, Marius, because we can't hear you very well. I thought JIT server was already GA'd on a couple of platforms, so.
Yes, so I'm going to speak louder. So G server has GA'd on X and P, and we still have to GA on Z. This is what's going to happen with the release 032.
So on Z.
So there were a couple of bugs that remain to be fixed. Those bugs have been fixed.
Here.
And I was saying that in the nightly builds, we also have support for custom metrics for Prometheus. And I have verified that this works in able to display graph those metrics. At the moment, I'm looking to see how I can enable auto-scaling based custom metrics. Auto-scaling based on CPU and memory work out of the box.
It's Marius. Next microJIT meeting is scheduled for the 21st. Toby, is there anything to call out for the CRIU support?
Nothing new to mention this week.
Jack, is there anything to call out for Project Loom support?
Not much to call out then. We're still making progress on getting the merging to get a compilable build.
Do we have any TA on that?
We're hoping by the end of this week to get a compilable build for Loom so that we can start testing and looking at the native APIs to implement.
One thing I'll add is the OpenJDK project is currently reviewing the virtual threads JEP, and so we can expect that it will land in a week or two. As soon as it does, we'll probably have some incompatibilities in the JDK Next repo, at least until we get everything, get all the natives, at least the stubs implemented, get all the JCL changes lined up so that we can merge the latest extensions repo changes. That's just something to keep in mind.
In terms of Panama, Cheng, is there an update?
Hear me, Dan?
Yep.
Okay. Currently I'm working on an app called X PPC 64-bit, and specifically I'll already fix a couple of issues related to the general sync. Some minor issues out there, and I'll keep verifying combined with a bunch of tests to make sure there's no other issues introduced in the primitive type support before we move forward to the structured work. I'm also exploring the possibility to optimize the code to avoid duplicate address within the same resource scope. Still looking at to see what I can do with that. Yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Cheng. Daryl, is there an update on the M1 work?
I guess not a lot. The still fixing various defects, and but we have made some progress on some of the RAS work that we need to do. So properly generating core files, and JDump view is now starting to work. And I think some work is progressing on the DDR side as well. So things that we need to do in order to GA it eventually, but seems like we're making progress there.
Any update on the compressed ref support?
Slow progress, but nothing really worth updating just yet.
Keith, is there anything to call out with the shared library rename work?
No progress on that this week.
Bapneed, is there an update on the OpenJDK method handles?
Hey Dan, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I think there was a discussion or there was an update last week, but we couldn't decide because not all stakeholders were present then. The questions which were, I've added the update from, documented it as under the 12th April 2022. Yep, these are the questions which were asked last week, and I've recorded the answers as well, so we can continue the discussion this week. We couldn't come to a conclusion because neither you nor Daryl were present last week.
Okay, so we had asked about the differences. Based on what I'm reading here, it sounds like the differences are mostly small, at least in the places where it would be touching on the VM support. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is correct. I have JDK 8 working. I'm just in the process of creating a PR with documentation. There will be few more PRs to have the work completed, but it shouldn't take a lot of time.
Okay. That's good news, because it sounds like then we're in a very different position around backporting this rather than a year's worth of work. If I'm skimming through your update here, the end of the summer
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And do we have a sense of what the performance difference would be?
Based upon the information given to me, since we are at par between 11 and 17, it should be the same. And as we push in more JIT-related performance improvements, we should be better out of the box. So the retuning costs, it should either be minimal or there should be no retuning costs when the performance work is complete. But at this point, we should be at par if we have the functional changes ready for 8 and 11. But it will be, we will still need to verify it. So it hasn't been verified, so that's still an assumption at this point.
Okay, so if I heard that correctly, 17 with OpenJDK's method handles is on par with JDK 11 using the old J9 implementation.
Yep, that is correct.
So we would expect that 11 to 11 performance should be equivalent.
Yes.
Have you done any measurements around the amount of memory needed for classes that are loaded?
I can do it for 8 since it's working. And I think this will be startup footprint memory performance we are looking at.
Yeah, this is an increase in the amount of classes loaded. It's one of my concerns with this. It's one of the non-obvious costs along the way. So
we did look at, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We did look at the number of classes loaded in JDK 11 between the J9 and the OpenJDK method implementation, and it was higher, but majority of those classes were related to var handles. Now those classes don't exist in JDK 8, and if the implementation is fairly similar, we should expect that the delta in JDK 8 should be less than it is in 11 and 17.
And that includes the generated Lambda form classes?
Yeah.
What did we use to do that validation?
For those, for what I'm describing, we simply looked at the number of classes loaded. So it was verbose classes, I believe, with and without method handle support. So it's not a statement of how much memory is used, but there's definitely a correlation there.
The question was more what application were we running when we checked that?
Okay.
Because I expect that to scale with the number of method handles we use, and in particular, the case that I think matters the most for this is the use of Lambda expressions, because that'll be the major driver of method handle use in JDK 8.
I believe this was done with Liberty, so I don't think there was. I'm not sure how much usage of Lambda expressions is in Liberty. Yeah, that's a good point.
We can do some more runs with method handle intensive workloads and get a better number in the near future.
Okay. I think that would be a really good piece to just validate this.
And so can you clarify, like, does it still just need to be verbose classes, or should we also be looking into more details? Or is there a better approach of getting memory for classes other than verbose classes?
Does verbose classes report?
I think it only lists the number of classes. It doesn't report memory.
The question I had was actually more about, does it list the classes loaded using unsafe defined anonymous class? I know we've gone back and forth on where and how those get reported, whether they hit the class file load hook or not, and things like that. And I don't know what the state of that code is in 8 to know whether they get reported through the verbose class mechanism or not.
I will double check then and see. At this point, I don't know the answer to that because I haven't looked into the output in detail.
That would be the major thing to check is, figuring out what the increase in the number of classes is a reasonable starting proxy for this. But we need to make sure that whatever mechanism we're using for that accurately reports the classes from unsafe defined anonymous class.
Understood. Yeah, I will make sure the correct information is being loaded from whatever method is used to gather this data.
Thanks, Babneet. There's a confirmatory question for Daryl or Nazim. about whether JDK 17 is on par with 11. I don't know if Nazim is on the call, but Daryl, I see you. Are you able to confirm that the two are on?
Sorry, that's the first I've seen this question, but we haven't run JDK 11 with the OpenJDK method handles for several months. But at that time, when we switched our attention to JDK 17, they were essentially at par. I'm assuming that's still going to be a true statement, but we'd have to do some work to validate that. I can have a chat with Nazim if he's done any investigation. I don't think he has, but I can have a quick chat with him about that, and we'll have to collect the numbers if that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to just. I think the statement here is that 17 with OpenJDK method handles is on par with 11 running the OpenJ9 method handles, and if I'm hearing what you're saying, it sounds like you're confirming that statement.
I'm not going to dispute the statement, but I think we need to measure it to be sure.
Right, so it sounds like we're in a much more optimistic place for being able to do this, and a couple of things to follow up on.
And just to confirm what this is, you mean backport the OpenJDK method handles implementation to 11 and 8?
Yes, it sounds like the amount of work required to do that is significantly less than originally estimated, and that if performance considerations check out and the number of classes doesn't cause us to trip up on other platforms, and it sounds like this is a reasonable and worthwhile approach to take.
Yep, agree. Thanks.
Does anyone else have comments or concerns around this this discussion or this approach? Are there any other topics that we want to cover this week? All right, then thank you everyone, and we'll call this for this week, and we'll pick this up again next week. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.